Is there a specific type of eschatology, a view of the end times that is specifically Adventist, or is it just the idea Jesus is coming back?
I think the Adventist thing came out of, we were born out of the Millerite movement. And so there was this thought in the early 1800s that Christ was going to return soon, like within, everyone tried to set a date. In fact, they set several dates. And there would be this great expectation this was going to happen. And then they finally settled on a date in 1844, and it didn't happen. And the result of that is actually where our denomination was born, was they sat around and they said, okay, what happened? What did we get wrong? And they started looking at what they really believed, but what they decided on was they still really believed that Jesus was going to come soon. There was something that they were reading in the Bible, the timelines and prophecy and everything else like that, was that you look at the course of history and the events that have happened, and you can look at the dates, if you pull them out of Daniel and of Revelation, that something is happening very soon. We think Christ is coming back soon. And so that's where the Adventist part comes out of that.
All right. So these are the Happy Valley, Pacific Northwest SDAs that embrace a repackaged and reimagined version of Adventism, what I call Neo-Adventism. So this should be interesting. But that was a pretty basic standard rundown. I would obviously disagree with the framing of SDA history, and I don't think that comes as a shock to anybody if you've been listening for any length of time. I also understand he's trying to be as succinct as possible and have some brevity, but you'll notice he didn't actually say that they were born out of multiple failed prophecies, or that some of their key doctrines were formulated as responses to failed prophecies. He simply highlighted that there were multiple false dates that were set by various individuals. Now, we'll see if this comes up later. But Matt asked him if there's a specific eschatology to Adventism. Matt, great question. Now, it's almost become routine to show this article every week, but here we are again. When speaking about the unique Adventist worldview, the great controversy theme, notice one thing that the late SDA theologian Herbert Douglas points out. Quote, "The Adventist eschatological framework sets us apart from every other denomination that speaks of the end of the world because it is governed by the great controversy theme. The distinctly Adventist view is formed by a mutually supportive cluster of ideas, including conditional immortality, Seventh-day Sabbatarianism, a premillennial historicist eschatology, acceptance of the gift of prophecy in the ministry of Ellen White, teachings about the priestly work of Christ in the heavenly sanctuary, and a prepared people by his grace. This mutually supportive cluster of ideas that marks Adventist eschatology exists today because the great controversy theme informs all areas of Adventist thought." Now, Adventists can balk and scoff at Douglas all they want, but that is one of the foremost theologians this movement has ever produced. He understood the system and wrote a book on this specific subject called The Heartbeat of Adventism. It's still in print. Pacific Press is still printing copies of it and selling it. So to answer Matt's question, yes, Adventism does have a specific eschatology, and it isn't just standard fare historicist premillennialism either. Adventist eschatology is a part of the lens in which the whole Bible is read. And we've looked at this from countless SDA leaders before, where they point to things like Cain and Abel when talking about the mark of the beast to say that Cain being marked was foreshadowing the end times. Because he worshiped wrongfully, he worshiped in a way that wasn't pleasing to God, so he received a mark, and that's going to be like the people at the end of time, like Protestants and Roman Catholics who are worshiping God in a false way type thing. Or 1 Kings 18, where Ahab and Jezebel are used to say that's a picture of apostate Protestantism linking up with Roman Catholicism, and the SDA church is pictured by Elijah trying to repair the breach and call Christians out of spiritual Babylon. Idolatry and all this stuff. But really at the top of all of that is the great controversy theme. And as Herbert Douglas points out, it's the GCT that functions as the glue in their mutually supportive cluster of doctrines. If one falls, the cluster falls apart. It is the great controversy theme that keeps them bound together. One has to interpret everything through that framework to really understand what SDA theology proper is teaching. Which is why you're going to always hear me going back to the great controversy theme and examining Adventist doctrine in light of that. Without that, Adventism loses its savor. It's why they have to be held to account on that level.